He was frustrated because he couldn't end it and because he thought he couldn't win it. And I kept trying to plead with him to end it, to win it, to end it by winning it. And I said, you ought to, if you have to blow Hanoi off the face of the earth, blow it off the face of the earth. He said, I can't do that. I can't do that. They tell me we're winning. We're going to win this thing. I can't use ultimate power. I said, why can't you? And I said, I don't care what advice you're getting from whom. I said, it's too slow. The war is too slow. You're not winning the war. You're losing the battle at home, and it's going to destroy you.
There were no good choices that anybody could devise as to how you were going to get out of Vietnam and still have an honorable peace or something of that kind. The choices that you had were all skewed towards, do I send in more troops? Do I keep the same troops in there? Do I do more bombing? Do I put on more pressure? In what kind of cheap way can I put it on? What are the risks of China coming in? Should I bomb in Cambodia? They were all hawkish choices because there really wasn't anything on the other side that you could devise. We had more than 500,000 men there. How are you going to get them out?
The bombs in Vietnam exploded home. They destroyed the dream and possibility for a decent America. It is estimated that we spend $322,000 for each enemy we kill in Vietnam, while we spend in the so-called war on poverty in America only about $53 for each person classified as poor.
I argued with him a great deal. I said, you know, you're wrong. You're telling the American people that they can have guns and butter. And I said, that's wrong. This war is costing an awful lot of money, and you shouldn't have guns and butter.
The war against poverty was killed by the war in Vietnam. First of all, because of the lack of money. Secondly, it stopped because of preoccupation with the shooting war and the killing fields of that war. Death and destruction and bombing and all that captures the public imagination much more than creating something that's good. Birth is never dramatized like death.
The raids over North Vietnam continued until more tons of bombs were dropped on Vietnam than had been dropped during all of World War II. Still, Ho resisted. Hanoi and other cities may be destroyed, Ho told his countrymen, but the Vietnamese people will not be intimidated.
The Vietnamese, had we bombed them to the Stone Age, would have gone back into the jungle, waited us out. They knew something that we also knew but didn't acknowledge, and that was that someday we would go home and they could come back and rebuild what we had destroyed.
I think I made two mistakes in judgment. One was that I underestimated the tenacity of the North Vietnamese. And I think I overestimated the patience of the American people.
By the end of 1967, a grim sense of siege was settling over the White House. The president dug in. He had spent a lifetime climbing to the pinnacle of power. His whole political life now hung on only one issue, Vietnam.
He decided to call in the men whom he respected most. They became known as the wise men. There were about 10 of them. If you put the total service, those men must have had 250 to 300 years of government service.
These were the architects of American foreign policy: Dean Acheson, John McCloy, Averell Harriman. Contain communism, don't let it spread, had been their advice to every president since Truman.
The picture that was given to them was that we were making slow, grinding progress. And we thought we could see at some point a break with the other side really starting to really weaken and go downhill.
Dean Acheson said later, "I told him he was wholly right on Vietnam, that he had no choice except to press on."
They voted unanimously for him to go on with his course. He was greatly comforted by that.
The advice they gave was, look, the country doesn't see it the way you're describing it. You've got to develop a way to make your assessments of the situation more credible.
Well, I gave them perfectly silly advice. They were sensible people, and why they were so silly, I don't know. My main advice was, well, you ought to improve your public relations. Well, after the meeting, I spoke to Dean Acheson and John Coles and Arthur Dean, and I said, you old bastards, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. You're like a lot of vultures sitting on the fence and sending the young man out to die. And I walked out of the room.
Johnson had expanded the war in secret. Now he set out to sell it to the American people.
We are making progress. We are pleased with the results that we're getting. I think we're moving more like this. And I think they're moving more like this, instead of straight up and straight down.
He called home the commander of U.S. forces in Vietnam.